Look, Brawl Stars is a great game, but it has one huge problem. In fact, it's such a big problem that I think if they could solve this, Brawl Stars could potentially be one of the top mobile games of the past decade. It's the matchmaking experience, and I'm sure this is one a lot of you can relate to. So I have 4 areas of the matchmaking experience that I'm going to talk about and I offer some solutions to, but I want to hear your feedback on each area and what solutions you have as well. So let's do it. Now, there's a lot of things that can go wrong with matchmaking in Brawl Stars. Of course, it might be hard to find teammates in a lot of different situations, so a lot of you are probably going with randoms. And then, going with randoms, there's a lot of things that can go wrong there too. They might not be very good, but even if they are good, you might actually have a bad brawler team comp for that map or that game mode. There's a lot of different things, and even too, maybe you're matching up against players that are also in teams and you're playing with randoms, or you're matching up very high different trophy levels. And in fact, the matchmaking of Brawl Stars, it's such a big problem that I actually think it causes the second biggest problem in Brawl Stars to be as big as it is today, and that's teaming. I think if you could solve the matchmaking issues in Brawl Stars, teaming would actually be not nearly as much of a problem. I feel like a lot of you rely on solo showdown to get your fun experience out of Brawl Stars because playing with randoms or the general 3v3 experience for Brawl Stars can be not very fun in a lot of different ways. So you go to solo showdown because you don't have to rely on anyone else. But eventually you start encountering a lot of teaming. If you could solve the 3v3 matchmaking experience in Brawl Stars, I think it would make teaming not nearly as much of a big problem as it is today, because you wouldn't have to rely on solo showdown nearly as much to get that fun out of Brawl Stars. Now, there's 4 areas within the matchmaking experience that have a really big impact on how it's going to go for you. I'm going to talk about each one, but I want to hear your feedback on all of them and any potential solutions you have as well. First area is the general brawlers your team has, your team comp. This is a huge impact. I mean, first of all, if you're playing with randoms, this is one of the hardest things to control. And even if you get good teammates, if you have a bad team comp, that's almost just as much of a problem as if you have good teammates at all, as the brawlers you're running. Because let's say you're going on a very long range map and you're all tanks, you're gonna have a really bad time, even if you all play pretty well. It can have a really big impact on how you do. I mean, let's say you go into gem grab, don't have a gem carry. That's gonna be a problem. Now, there's a couple different ways I think you can improve this, including having a game mode where you draft the brawlers you play, and that way you're not gonna have duplicate brawlers and you can better figure out what team comp you're going to run. But I'm not gonna talk about that. I'm gonna talk about something that I think is for every single game mode and the general experience for picking or figuring out what sort of team comp your brawler is going to have when you match with randoms. Now, in general, when you match with randoms, one thing matchmaking tries to do is tries to limit having duplicate brawlers on your team. And this is something they factor into the matchmaking experience. Now, one thing I think you can do, taking off that, is if you can assign each brawler a certain role and then try to limit brawlers of the same role matching together, I think you could start forming better team comps. Now, this is just an example, and I'm going to throw out some brawlers for each role, and it's maybe not going to be perfectly accurate. And 2, it's going to probably vary by the game mode. But I think in general, if you can try and assign a role to every single brawler and then try to limit brawlers of the same role from matching together in random matchmaking, I think you could greatly improve the general team comps that each team is going to have. Now, I actually think if you could get roles that are very specific and not general all-encompassing, that's probably better, as otherwise, well, not all brawlers are really that similar, let's be honest. But if you were to generalize it, I came up with 5 roles that I think would be not bad. First off, just a close range or tank sort of role. Of course, you could have a long range role. I think a medium range role works too, but then you can have like a thrower role, and then you could have, say, Barley, Dynamite, Spike in that one. Those are all 3 similar brawlers. You could have a turret role, Penny, Jesse, Pam, also 3 similar brawlers. And you can keep on going like this. If you can get specific roles like those last 2 I mentioned, I think you can really improve the matchmaking experience. This way you're not going to have, say, 3 tanks on the same team. You're not going to have 3 long-range brawlers on the same team. But of course, you would have to start making this sort of map specific, because certain maps are going to be heavily favored towards a certain role. And there's not much you can do to avoid that. But I think as long as you are aware of that and you start implementing those ideas into that specific map, saying, hey, if this is a thrower map, make throwers a little bit more common, then that would definitely improve it a lot. Now that problem, fixing brawler team comps, as important as it is probably the hardest one to solve. So let's move on to the second problem area. And that's how difficult it can be to just find teammates in general. If you can make it a lot easier for people to find teammates in the first place, you don't even have to rely on random matchmaking to begin with. So solving the problem before it even occurs seems like a really great way to do that. But actually there's a lot of problems with finding teammates in Brawl Stars. So I have some solutions. First off, one of the potentially best solutions to finding teammates is the friends list. But actually, I asked you all how many people you have on your friends list, and over half of you said you have less than 25 people on your friends list. And I also just want to say, you guys are not the average general population. You are probably much more hardcore than the average Brawl Stars player. So this tells me the heavy majority of Brawl Stars players have hardly any people on their friends list at all. And to me, this is a huge red flag. This means one of the best potential solutions to finding teammates is not working as intended, and in fact, it's hardly being used at all. So this is definitely not a good thing. But first of all, just encouraging people to add more people to the friends list is probably a big thing that needs to happen. I'm not entirely sure how you do that, so I'm gonna talk about ways to improve the friend list and just in general ways to make it easier to find teammates. First of all, there's a lot of parts about the friends list that I'm not a big fan of. Okay, look, now, as you get high in trophies, everyone knows you can't play with randoms and really gain trophies. You're getting around 500 trophies, you're gonna stop playing with randoms for the most part, and you're gonna be playing with people from your friends list. So when you get to a really high friends list, you actually encounter a problem where you kind of are incentivized to not have a huge friends list, because it's really annoying to find people to play with when you have around 200 people on your friends list. First of all, it's kind of annoying that all these people appear as online and they can't actually, you can't even invite them. They're in a full party or they're on Do Not Disturb, whatever. First of all, make those people at the bottom of the list. Have everyone at the top be people that you can invite, people you can actually invite or you can request to join. Second thing, improve the invite feature. There's a lot of ways this can be improved. First of all, what game mode am I being invited to in the first place? Also, how many people are in that party? Is it just them? Do they have another person? That's going to impact whether I want to join or not. Another solution you could do is add a looking for team feature. Now, I think this could be good for Brawl Stars. I definitely think there's potential problems with it. Of course, you're having random people in a chat with them and you never know how that can go. It might potentially add a little more toxic stuff to Brawl Stars, but that's just in general how it is whenever you're playing with random people. And also, I feel like every other MOBA has this sort of thing and they sort of just roll with it. First of all, have a looking for team feature similar to looking for club feature, right? You can have different filters, you can have a game mode filter, and two, you can have the general feature only show people who are within an overall 1,000 trophies within you. So you're only really finding people who are around the same trophy range as you. That way you're not abusing it to only find people who are really high in trophies and looking to get carried. Now I know any sort of team finder sort of solution has a general problem of language barrier, and this is going to be a hard one to get around, but actually there is a game that gets around it pretty well called Lords Mobile, and actually in their chat they have an auto translate button, and every single text that is put in the game you can press a button right next to it and it translates the text into whatever your general setting language is. I'm thinking what they do is they just run whatever that text is through Google Translate and it just translates it in a second. It's actually pretty nice. It's not perfect. It doesn't work with everything. And of course, it's not going to work very well with slang or if people are misspelling stuff. But it's a general way to get around any sort of language barrier. And hey, this game has solved that general language barrier. And in that game, people from different languages interact with each other all the time. So this could be a way to get around that potential problem with the team finder solution. Now, the third huge problem area with the matchmaking experience, it's going to be in-game communication. Now, look, even if you play with randoms, and let's say you get lucky, you get good teammates, they're pretty good players, and they're actually playing good brawlers for the map. You got a good team cap, nice. But your general synergy is not very good. Let's say you have two people go to the same side, or you have all three people going in the middle of the map. You have people who just aren't anywhere nearly on the same page. If you can get people a little bit better in-game communication, just some way in-game to figure out, hey, look, you go left, I go right, I'll go middle, something at all could improve it a lot. A lot of people suggested emotes. That's more of a fun thing, doesn't really help communication that much. It could, I guess, depending on how it's done. I think if you can add some sort of text line, could be great. Here are 5 potential things I came up with that would be great to add to the game. And also 2, if you could add these as voiceovers. So whenever someone uses one of these things, it actually pops up on the in-game sound and it says what it is. For instance, I'm going left, or I'm going right, I'm going middle. Those are 3 great ones that would be so useful. And you just do that at the start of the match or any time else, like maybe you're respawning and they're saying, I'm going this way. That way you can just figure out a little bit which direction your teammates are gonna go, and you can go, hey, if they're going that, you know what, either I'm gonna go that way too, or I'm gonna go a different way. But now that you actually know where your teammates might go. Also too, stuff like fall back or go forward would be great things to have. Just anything like that. Any sort of communication like that would be fantastic to improve which way or direction your team's gonna go. Also add a thing to limit spamming it. Maybe you can only do it every 5 seconds, 7 seconds, something like that. That way it's not too spammy. And if you have the voiceover on it as well, add in the brawler voices, it makes it even easier. That way you don't even have to look at where it is on the screen. You just hear it and you can react instantly. In general, if you can make it easier for people who have never played together, never met, to have some sort of communication and figure out a little bit of strategy, it could go a long way to improving that overall experience of playing with those people. Now, the 4th problem area with the matchmaking experience is just the general matchmaking system. First of all, I think we need to start pairing randoms versus randoms and teams versus teams. If you do this, I think this solves a lot of, maybe it doesn't solve, but it makes a lot of the earlier problems I mentioned not as big of a deal. This way, if you're a random player, you may still have all those other problems that I was talking about earlier, but at least if you're playing against other randoms, well, they got the same problems as you. Versus if you're a random player with playing with other random players and you're playing against a team, well, that team has solved a lot of those problems that you are still going to have in the match you have right now. The brawlers you're playing, the general synergy you have, and just how good your teammates are, whether you've talked to them or not, things like that. So if you start pairing randoms versus randoms and teams versus teams, I think this would solve, it would help mitigate a lot of the severity of those problems that we were talking about. And I think this would really benefit the majority of Brawl Stars players. Now, the other part of matchmaking looks at your trophies, and there could definitely be improved. That's also a really big factor as far as how strong the matchmaking is. You always, of course, want to be playing people to a similar overall trophy level to you. But I think the current solution Brawl Stars has in place for this is actually pretty decent, right? They're looking at, not only are they looking at your overall trophy level, but they're also looking at the trophies of the brawler you're playing, and they're looking at the same thing for all of your team members. Now, maybe it doesn't work perfectly every single time. Maybe it doesn't even work well every single time, but I think that's the general direction you should be going about it, is looking at both of those things. And the only way to really make that more accurate is to put more players in the game who are at that overall range that you are at as well. And there's no great way to really do that, right? Although one thing I actually will say that could actually make that a little bit easier is if you could solve delay in Brawl Stars. If you could make delay a lot less likely to happen. What I mean is when you go in a game and you fire a shot and it doesn't actually happen right away. There's a little bit of a delay in that shot. If you can solve delay or lag, you could start playing players from other regions a lot easier. And then all of a sudden you have a lot bigger player pool to choose who you're matching against, and then you can play people who are closer trophy range to you are, as long as you have that delay problem solved. You got to do that first, and then you can increase the player pool you're playing against. I talk about lots of other great ways to improve Brawl Stars right over there that you might enjoy. Thanks so much for watching today's video, though. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll catch you later.